Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we're going to talk about closing out our realities for the calendar year. You will see a lot of things shift normally around the January timeframe. Anytime you get into a new calendar year, each year has a different energetic pattern. So you will find yourself closing things out, checking in with people. Usually that's why it all kind of centers around the holidays, but it's really not about the holidays. Because we really get to a point where we don't care anything about the holidays. We bring our higher aspects all the time. The day does not matter. In fact, you almost get to a point where they mean so little that you don't even participate in them anymore. Like, it doesn't matter to you. Like for me, Christmas, none of that matters. Christmas, Thanksgiving, every day is just a day where I do what I do. And none of those days mean anything anymore. It's kind of like birthdays don't mean anything anymore. You know, who wants to just be remembered on one day a year? In a sense, it doesn't really mean much. You want people that are in your life every day, and people whose realities you are affecting are there every day. So you will find that a lot of these kind of holidays don't matter anymore. You don't have any pull to them anymore. It doesn't matter. But I do feel that every calendar year does have a meaning for the collectives. This is a big calendar year coming up in 2022. It's the third year that started back in, 2020. So it's kind of closing out that first 3-year cycle, which is huge for a lot of the collectives. And you're going to find every year you're going to be in a different place. You're going to be in a different space every year. If one year you were not around a lot of people because you didn't feel like you were supposed to be, the next year you might get back out around people again. Or you might not. You might have 2 or 3 years where you're not. But you normally can see when things start to change and you're going to be in a different part of your process. You might be in a year where there's a lot of body stuff, so you're not out and about as much as far as physical body stuff. There might be a year where you're doing more global stuff as far as connecting with more people online. I've done that more the last couple of years. I've gotten more out of my local community stuff. Some because of the era we're in right now. A lot of stuff hadn't been opened. And you start to change what you're doing. If you focused on honing a lot of different skills, you find all of a sudden, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. I've gotten really good at that. Now I'm going to go master something else. I feel like every year is a different marker for you. Every year is going to be a different marker on what you're going to do next. You might not do that anymore. But you normally, before you get there, where you can ring in the new stuff, in a sense, you have to look at what do you got to close out. And you'll find a lot of stuff might start coming at you. A lot of people you haven't seen in a while will start kind of making their way back in. Sometimes it's a check-in to see how everybody is. Are we going to have a reality, in the next calendar year? Is this going to come back in for a while? Is it going to be something that's going to fade out? Or are you going to get a different aspect of these people? You will kind of notice a lot of stuff happening. For me, normally late December, January really kind of dictates how my year is going to go. I kind of feel like it's kind of laid out in that time frame for me, in the physical. Sometimes you'll know ahead of time, energetically, you'll just know, okay, this year is going to be big for these things. You might have a lot of years where you're kind of by yourself and you're living more solitary in a sense and really mastering yourself and mastering the work you're doing. And then all of a sudden now it's your partnerships. Now you have to partner up with people. You're going to be getting a lot of people coming in for that reason, whereas 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe for the last 2 or 3 years, that had not been a focus and you hadn't really been able to even make any of those work. So just keep a very open mind on what is coming next, because you will start to see there's definitely a shift. Sometimes you just get a repeat of the year before. Like for me, 2020 and 2021 were kind of similar. A lot more clearing years for me, kind of deeper clearing years. So it was also finishing my 7 to 10 year initial consciousness ascension process. So I was kind of on the tail end of that whole 10-year cycle. But I found that for the last 2 years, I kind of went through the same stuff, but from a different frequency, if that makes any sense. But it was kind of similar. I didn't have any big things come in. I laid a lot of groundwork in 2020 with a lot of people, and I could see the realities that were going to play out with those people not really they didn't actually physically play out in 2021, but I could see where they would come back in later. Sometimes you're just laying the groundwork and you don't even know that's why you're doing certain things in one year. And the next year you understand a little bit more. The next year you start to see a little bit more. So look at also what you're starting to see. What are your new realizations as you're going into your next year, your process? I don't like the time reference, but I do feel it's kind of appropriate here because every year to me kind of shows me something different. Every year I'm in sort of a different phase. Even though I might be in a pocket at one phase for 2 to 3 years, every year we're still a little different, and you kind of know you're going to catapult into something else. But I do feel like this year's going to close out the last 3 years for a lot of people. So a lot of stuff that was going on in 2020, if it hasn't quite been closed out yet, you might be saying you're supposed to be closing that out in the calendar year, and you might see a lot of things that start to kind of filter in a little early, even though you might have seen some things start to filter in 4 or 5, months ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. It depends on how plugged in you are as to how quickly you can see this stuff coming and what you know is going to be your theme. And if you're not sure, what's my theme for 2022? What am I going to be doing? What am I going to be working on? Just ask. Ask your universe, what is this for me? You might see what it is for the collectives, but what is it going to be for me? What am I going to focus on in this year? It's a year where I'm going to be pulling away and being by myself more. It's a year where I'm going to be out again. I'll also see that for me, depending on the phase I'm in, my weight fluctuates. I'll be heavy one year, a little bit thinner the next year, really, really thin maybe the year after that, a little bit heavier after that, maybe thin for a few years, heavy for a couple of years, thin for a couple of years. You also will see your weight will start to shift. And that has to do with the more light we embody, the more we kind of swell up. We might eat a lot more comfort foods because that's what our body wants. Then we shed some programming, we'll shed some weight. Then we might be in a phase where we're out and about more and we're not carrying some of that weight. If you start carrying a lot of realities on your back, you're going to carry more weight. It's just kind of how the metaphors work here. So just look at where your body is. It could be a big body year for you coming up. The last year for me was a big body year. Even 2020, 2021 more for me was a bigger body year. It wasn't a really social year for me. That was not where I was in 2021, and really not in 2020. In 2020, just because of the environment, and even though it was for me, I felt kind of constricted. Whereas by 2021, I understood why I was in this part of my process and why the collectives were going through what they were going through, how that was supporting me during the time for me. So I saw it differently the next year. And then I can see things differently for what's going to happen in 2022. If you're interested in energy reports, a lot of people will do like kind of energy reports, but they're kind of generic in a sense that everyone's in a different phase of their process. So how someone sees the energy for them is where they are, whereas someone else might see it differently. So don't get too bogged down in the specifics. Just feel where you are with it. How do you relate to that messaging? How does that feel for you? Where do you feel you're going in the next year? And keep practicing the art of intuition.